Welcome to the Rosenfeld Review. Lou Rosenfeld here, and I am joined by not one, but two amazing people, amazing authors, because they've just co-written an amazing book. Leah Buley and Joe Natoli, welcome to the show. Great to have you both here.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Same here, Lou. Appreciate it very much.
You know they work well together because they even managed that, like, the pause where I introduced them and they didn't run over each other, they didn't step on each other's toes. So it doesn't always work that way with co-authoring, but you all did great, and it shows in the book. A lot of you know Leah and Joe, but just by way of introduction, I remember Leah when she was at Adaptive Path way back when, and that's around the time she wrote the first edition of the UX Team of One. She went on to do some really interesting work at Envision, designing a proprietary design maturity model, then went on to Forrester, is at a startup now, always doing interesting things. And Joe has just been a world-class UX educator. A lot of you know him from the UX 365 Academy, over 300,000 students taught at this point, and also doing a lot of consulting for a lot of different types of clients. But we're here to talk about the UX Team of One. Well, I wanted to say we should have maybe called it the UX Team of Two? I don't know. But I don't know. You could do all kinds of stupid plays on the title, but it is the UX Team of One, second edition. And the first edition has been perhaps our best-selling book out of the 60 or so books we've done. And for good reason. It's just an amazing toolkit that elegantly packs this incredible punch for whatever it was, 280 pages. The new edition's a little longer. It still punches way above its weight. It's just a great package of unbelievably useful content. And I thought we would talk a little bit about the book in general, what's changed, and why we need this book. Even today, when, theoretically UX is like this thing that is accepted, and there's these ginormous teams of hundreds of people doing this work. Well, at least that's how it seems sometimes. But, well, let's jump into it. So, Leah, let me ask you first. You came up with this concept, UX Team of One. Where were you when that happened, and why did you feel we needed that concept and ultimately a book?
Yeah. So I was a UX Team of One early in my career. I sort of discovered that I was interested in user interface design and user experience, mostly by creeping on online discussion groups and then trying to sort of work it into the jobs that I had, where I was doing a little bit of coding and a little bit of, I don't know what, everything. And those roles were, in weird small little companies that didn't actually understand that was my secret agenda. And sometimes what I was doing felt successful, and a lot of times it felt like it wasn't as successful as it could be. And that was sort of the context that I had when I went finally to work for Adaptive Path, which, for those of us who maybe haven't heard of it, is kind of one of the first kind of pioneering UX consultancies back when the field was really just getting started in the early aughts, the early 2000s. And at Adaptive Path, what I saw was the practitioners there were just using all of these sort of methods that were very collaborative in nature, and really did a fantastic job at drawing the stakeholders that they worked with into the user experience process in a way that had better outcomes. And I thought to myself at the time, oh my gosh, I wish I had known these methods when I was at this little company or that little company. I think I could have really applied them. And so that was sort of my intent when I sort of realized there might be a book in this, was just share the methods, share the wisdom that I'm getting from these really smart people at Adaptive Path, and but apply them into a situation that feels like the ones that I've been in. So that was the beginning. And so then you reached out, we started working on a book. It was a painstaking process, but we were sort of moving forward on it. And then a really interesting thing happened. I actually remember this. I finished the first really complete draft of the book July 2012. And I know this because it was aligned with the due date for my first child. So I was rushing to try to get this book done. And then August 1st, 2012, my son was born. And on that day, IBM announced that they were investing $100 million to build out a design practice. And so it felt like there was just this moment where all of a sudden it was like this little thing that people are trying to like do on the side, on the fly in an organization. Like, nope, like this is huge now. And this is like the future. And so the next decade was just watching that play out at increasingly bigger and bigger scales, and watching just one after the other, these big companies acquire design agencies and start to just expand the number of designers that they had. And honestly, there were not enough people in the field. You couldn't hire enough, which is why many of these companies started establishing early career development tracks. And then you had folks just coming in who were like, oh my gosh, I need that manual. I need the UX team of one. I'm in an organization with hundreds of people, but I still feel like a UX team of one. So it's been so fascinating and rewarding to watch how this book idea has sort of like landed with this moment in time where the field was in such great transition. And so it sort of took on a life of its own at that point, but those were its humble beginnings.
Well, I mean, it's also interesting. I had no idea, by the way, that your son and the huge announcement at IBM and the book completion were all, basically at the same time. Yeah, I guess that was Phil Gilbert and company at IBM doing that, and suddenly we were talking about UX teams of 2000. But those people needed this package of content back then, even if they were in these large organizations. And sometimes, I don't know what you feel about this, like sometimes I feel like we should have had a more like boring title for the book, like the Intro to UX or UX Fundamentals or something like that. But it worked for people in large organizations as well as small. Why do you think that is?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that about the title. Joe and I were just chatting about this last week, and Joe's quip, I love this, was we should have called it Everything You Could Possibly Need to Know About Practicing UX Work That You Didn't Learn in Your Grad Program.
Short.
Could have been the subtitle, but all right.
But that's the essence of it, right? And I think that speaks to actually why it worked for a lot of people, because it aims for a comprehensiveness without being totally overwhelming. Mm-hmm. So there's this kind of like, here's everything kind of soup to nuts. It isn't a rigid process. You can pick up these methods in flexible ways. It's a manageable amount of techniques, but it's all really architected to be practical given the realities of, work in businesses. So I think that there are amazing textbooks in the market, or books on the market, that really like lay out in painstaking detail everything you need to know about user experience. That's not this book. This book is sort of like the short course to get into work really fast, and it's really optimized for like how it really goes down.
Well, I also think that your sections back then and still today with the new edition are short enough that the reader can get an overview in a way that allows them not only to like get enough information about each method or technique or tool, but also to synthesize them. I mean, you have to sort of have the toolkit laid out for you to use the tools together. Otherwise, it's overwhelming, and either you have many books, or you have to have a library, and it becomes difficult to figure out what goes with what. You manage to do that in a small package. I also think that, maybe some of the success, and maybe for your course too, Joe, your online course, is the fact that there were a lot of people learning UX. There was something of a gold rush, and we saw the advent of a shit ton of boot camps that didn't quite deliver, both on the promise that they promised to the students, but also just the knowledge that they were imparting. Do you feel like, the kind of educating that you've been doing is collectively has been sort of like trying to right those wrongs in a way, trying to fix some things? What about you, Joe?
Yes. I mean, the answer to that is an unequivocal yes. And this is going to sound like a soapbox moment, but I don't mean it to. I really feel like, I'll go back to the first edition of this book. Okay, the reason I was a fan of it when it came out is because I've always been a nuts and bolts kind of person. Okay, I want simple, I want practical, because I think the world is messy, and I think work that happens inside corporate organizations is by its very nature messy. People, politics, pressure from all these different places that have nothing to do with product design. So my issue with most UX education, boot camps, training, even down to, some books, articles, a lot of things that pass for, instruction manuals as to here's how you go about doing this work. I think that very little of it acknowledges the reality that people who are practitioners of user experience in any way, shape, or form, from researchers to designers to product designers to even UI designers, nobody talks about the pressure that's there. And nobody talks about the fact that all these detailed processes will not fly in an organization that is obsessed with speed. It's very difficult to shoehorn people into an agile process where the emphasis is on, are we done? Are we done? Are we done? Are we done? And we're going to iterate rather, and we'll fix that later. All right. That goes on the backlog. We'll get to it in the next sprint. We'll get to it in the next sprint, which, by the way, you never get to it in the next sprint. That never happens. When it goes to the backlog, it's dead. It's over. So you asked me, do I feel like this is even the teaching at UX 365? Is this righting wrongs? Absolutely. It's one of the core motivations for everything that I do, okay, including being involved in this second edition and for the last 20 plus years of my life. I mean, that's one of the things, probably obviously, that gets me out of bed in the morning.
Well, it's interesting too, because the way you describe the reality on the ground, it sounds actually very lonely. Even if you're part of a large organization, ultimately at the end of the day, you're on your own. And that's why I think you need the support of toolkits like the UX Team of One. Now, Joe, when we talked about a second edition, what did you feel had changed? What were we ready for? What did you want to see the second edition do that had that addressed the changes of the last decade?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I think I say this at one point in part of my introduction, but in a way, it's a case of the more things change, the more they stay the same, to some degree, because the fundamental truths that Leah laid out in the first edition, okay, these processes, these very clear, practical ways of going about doing the work, to me, the need for that has never gone away. As complex as technology has become, certainly, and as fast as the pace of delivery has become, and all the new pressures that are acting upon anybody who designs products, I think that stuff all still holds true. The difference is, I think you're in a situation now, a decade later, where the patience to do that work is a lot less. The time given to do that work is a lot less. And it wasn't great to begin with, right? But it's less now. It is absolutely less now. And what's interesting is that Leah alluded to this. When that perfect storm happened and UX was on everybody's lips and became sort of a household name, UX teams got sort of more respect, more people were hired. So there's an apex. Now UX is respected. Now it's ubiquitous. Now it's everywhere. And then what happens? Like a lot of things, it starts to become seen as a bit of a commodity. So now the pendulum starts to swing the other way, where companies are giving lip service to it, but they're not necessarily allocating time and resources to it. They're not giving researchers the time to do their jobs. They're not even hiring researchers in some cases, or doing research at all. And they're not giving any of these folks the time and space that they need. So to me, when you and I first started talking about this second edition, every light bulb in my head that could possibly go off went off, because absolutely, not only is that all accurate, but this is the book, okay? I may have even said that to you one way or another. I mean, this is the book. I felt that way about this book when it came out. And I certainly feel that way now. So what's changed is I think we took a look at everything and said, all right, how do we make this, I don't know, even faster, I guess, or even just look for ways to make it more relevant to different types of situations and different types of pressures that people deal with. I tried to make it a point to talk about the corporate dysfunction, quite frankly, that exists everywhere. Politics is unavoidable. If you have more than two people in a room, you have politics. That's a given.
Even
so,
two.
Yeah, right. So I just think the pace of everything has increased. I think anyone who practices in this profession is under tremendous pressure to do a lot more with a lot less.
So
if I
you
could put it
described it
simply.
as it was a perfect storm some years ago, when all of a sudden everyone was excited about UX, and
Yeah.
then the things have sort of, in a way, gone the other direction, and rather than a storm that's perfect, we have a shitstorm.
Yes.
I'd like to talk about that, but we're going to take a quick break. Everyone, this is a Rosenfeld Review. We're talking with Leah Buley, Joe Natoli, and we'll be right back. I'm going to give you 5 reasons you should be using the Rosenverse. First one, where else are you going to find 100 events that you can attend for free every year, 2 a week, about product management, product design, and UX design, plus a highly engaged Slack-based community of over 13,000 of your peers. What else are you going to find in the Rosenverse? You'll find hundreds and hundreds of recordings of conference presentations and community session recordings, all in one place from a single search browser interface. And behind those hundreds of recordings are hundreds of experts, people who have advanced the field, people who are your peers who are doing interesting new things, all in one place. Why else should you use the Rosenverse? We've been advancing the field of UX since 2005. You're going to find the most advanced content on such topics as design operations and program management, UX research, and a host of other topics, from climate UX to civic design to how designers can work better in product organizations. Lastly, you've been trusting our content since we started back in 2005. Whether it's our books, our conferences, our community sessions, well, we think you're going to trust the way we've brought those all together so that you can spend less time searching and browsing and more time learning and benefiting. I hope you'll try out the Rosenverse, and I hope you'll consider upgrading to a gold paid membership, because it brings you a lot more. Not only do you have access to hundreds and hundreds of recorded conference presentations, but you also get access to the Rosenbot, which is a ChatGPT 4 level chatbot that we've been training on all of our content, including our growing collection of nearly 60 books and counting. It's all there, it's all great content, and the Rosenbot is a cutting-edge way to get at it. You can try the gold membership out with a trial for 2 weeks. Give it a try. Hope you like it. Welcome back to the Rosenfeld Review. I'm here with Leah Buley and Joe Natoli, co-authors of the second edition of the UX Team of One. And I kind of left you with a cliffhanger right before the break about a shitstorm. And it is kind of shitty out there right now, right, folks? I mean, I don't hear a lot of happy talk. I don't hear a lot of people saying, I just got the best job. I'm this, in UX, I'm just out of school and I'm getting 6 digits and life is roses and unicorns. First of all, so my question for you, and I'll start with you, Leah, what's going on? And then I'd like to know, does this book still have relevance given where we are? So you want to go first, Leah?
Sure. Yeah. So, when I look at the field from my perspective, obviously there's just economic conditions that all businesses are adapting to. And I've been in this field long enough to see that there are cycles to this. So part of what's happening is we're in the down cycle right now. And I've also seen this field come out of the down cycle multiple times. So I'm not like all doom and gloom. I think there's definitely more for this field. And I actually think that's true because what we do, which is, for the most part, make digital products actually usable and work for the goal they're intended for, is just increasingly and ever more and more central to every business. That is not going to go away at all. So that's sort of a little picture of where we are. But I do think there is a sense right now in many organizations that user experience and user experience research are not as critical as they used to be, because we have just we sort of evolved our tools for making products fast and learning through data what works and what doesn't. So if you've got like really fast agile cycles and continuous product delivery and really great A/B testing tools, and you can just like, incrementally test everything, I can see why some businesses are like, I don't know, we need that many people. Let's just like throw stuff against the wall, see what sticks, and that's a way to evolve and learn too. From my perspective, I think that almost makes the case for this book in a different kind of way, because really that process doesn't entail deeply understanding customers in the way that the user experience process provides for. So along the way, like I think we're getting smarter about making digital products faster, and we're still now and in the foreseeable future going to need to have people who know how to have a conversation with a customer, talk to a customer, test things with a customer, and understand in like an intrinsic way why something's working or not. And that's a lot of what this book sort of teaches how to do. So I think that's still really relevant.
So to paraphrase a little bit, 10 years ago, a lot of organizations had no UX practice and no, they didn't have data and no data.
Yeah.
And so it was really good to explore conversation and the qualitative side of what you can learn about people, and now they're drowning in data, which makes that qualitative side even more important. That's pretty cool. Joe, you've talked a lot about speed as a big change. Is that like is it speed or speed in the face of uncertainty? Like things are so uncertain that we have to get something done before the wind changes directions, because it's going to happen every 10 minutes.
I think it's both things. I mean, Leah, the way Leah described it, I think is perfect. We've adapted. There are a lot of tools and even methods, that have adapted to a faster way of working. So yeah, some of that speed is uncertainty. We got to move fast. If we don't move fast, we'll be left behind. I mean, speed to market is not a new thing. Companies have always had that urge. I think one of the reasons people feel so frustrated, at least what I experience, and I experience this when I consult with teams as well as teaching and coaching individual people, a large part of the reason people feel so lost, and frustrated and like, I don't even know if I want to do this anymore, because they're trying to adapt older ways of thinking, older methods, older processes, a more detailed, longer-term approach to what improving user experience is, right? In other words, and I think as an industry, we collectively tend to perpetuate that a little bit. To Leah's point, it has changed a lot. You have to meet people and teams and companies and managers and executives and everybody else where they are. Some of that stuff is not changing. I have this conversation at least once a week. That business is paying your salary. Are we here to advocate for users? Of course we are. But at the end of the day, the user is not paying your salary. That business is. So they have a stake in the sand. They have lots of operational and organizational and market pressure, forces, reasons to move fast, to move quickly, to test quickly, to learn quickly, to figure out whether they're on the right or wrong path quickly. So if the world is not going to wait for us, then we have to adapt. The work is still worth doing, right? It's absolutely worth doing, and we have ways to do it. So I think the frustration isn't that UX is impossible in an environment like this. The issue is that a lot of people are using the wrong approaches and the wrong tools, and they're trying to shoehorn a round peg into a square hole. And I think the UX team of one, again, the reason it's still relevant, and the reason I hope that it's now more relevant than ever, is because I think it addresses that. Yes, you can still do all this stuff. You absolutely can still get to good things, to good information, good knowledge.
And also, I mean, the way you all cover methods and tools is light in a way. Like it's designed to be accessible to people who don't necessarily have tons of budget and wherewithal. But do you find that like there's a trend toward fetishizing tools and methods today that you need to kind of fight against? Like people put a lot of eggs in certain baskets because those tools are powerful and expensive, and they get really invested in them. And maybe that's a problem we have. We're not really using balanced toolkits, but we're putting, a lot of eggs in one basket. Is that something you're seeing?
I think so. And what's interesting is that oftentimes if you can back everybody up for just 60 seconds, literally, okay, because again, there's a lot of pressure. There's people in the room, everyone's like, we have to get this done, we have to get this done, we have to get this done. If you can back everybody up for 60 seconds to say, I know we have all this at our disposal, I don't know that it's all worth doing for the answer that we need here. All right, we're placing a bet, essentially. The first thing we're trying to do is mitigate the risk inherent in that bet and try to even the odds in our favor and make sure that it pays off. So you have all this stuff and you can do all these things. Doesn't mean that you have to. Doesn't mean that you should, right? I think it's easy to get the goal, the overall goal of serving customers, serving business interests, that cycle that I talk so much about, the value loop, that gets lost, to your point, Lou, in this sea of, well, we have all this stuff at our disposal, so we should be using it because we've invested in it and because our people have been trained, to do this and that. And I think the real goal gets lost sometimes, and it takes a practitioner of some sort to say, time out for a second. Let's make sure that we're actually putting all this to use in the right direction for the right reasons. That's a problem worth solving in the first place.
So, yeah, if I can build on that, actually, I think, Lou, it's interesting because you asked about, like, is it a problem that we have all these, like, we're fetishizing all these tools and methods? And I actually think those tools and methods are two different things. And we actually have, I think we do invest a lot in tools, and to some extent, like, they're very empowering. So it's understandable why we start to fetishize them. Like the tools like Figma or Miro, or honestly, even like Google Docs, are enabling a kind of collaboration that just simply was not possible, years ago around this stuff. Yeah. And the solve for that 10 years ago was the book really was like, get out your sticky notes, get out your Sharpies, like, do it that way. So, thank God we've evolved beyond that to some extent, because I think now the tools we have help us work on distributed teams. They help us actually, like, involve engineering and PM in a much more, like, fluid way. So I can see why we pay a lot of attention to those tools. The issue is when we actually stop doing the methods because we have the tools. Like, just because you can make a comp, Figma doesn't necessarily mean you're done. You still, like, if you haven't done the process of, like, the black hat session with your team on the designs that you have, then there may be something you're missing in the process. And that's, in theory, what the book gives you is some methods you can plug in with.
Wait a minute. I thought now that we have Figma, we can lay off all of our designers.
No, man, you were misinformed.
Sure, so, it has AI now.
So. That's right. Oh gosh. So we're going to wrap up, but I have one more question. Very quickly, are there new audiences for this book that weren't around 10 years ago? Or who really needs the book that might not realize they need it? You want to go first on that, Leah?
Yeah, I think that the empowered squad is like a force to be reckoned with that didn't exist 10 years ago. So that's like the PM who really, like, cares deeply about customer experience, the engineering leader who, like, actually is, has the same quality for, like, done and good enough that the PM and the designers share. And so I think actually when that whole team has a knowledge of this process and sort of this approach, they ship better products together. So that's like an obvious place, I think, to start. Okay. What about you, Joe? What do you think?
I totally agree with that. And I think it's interesting. There are so many new people always coming into this profession. So there's no question that a book like this is valuable to them because it lays out the land that they are entering, I think, better than just about anything I've ever seen. And I don't say that simply because I was involved. I say that because the foundation of the book always did that, okay? But the other part is that I think experienced practitioners can get tremendous value from it as well, because these methods are shorter, they're simpler, they're more direct in a lot of ways, and they cut to the chase in a way that longer processes don't. I've met plenty of senior people who are throwing up their hands and going, we're doing all the things. Why isn't this working? And the truth is, they're kind of overworking and overthinking the problem, quite frankly. I think that everything in this book, and I know this sounds hyperbolic, I don't mean it to. I really believe that everything in this book is practical and direct and gets you from point A to B in terms of the things you need to know and uncover and figure out. At the very least, point you in the direction as to where you need to do more digging. I just don't think there's any better way to get there,
And
personally.
I obviously I'm biased too, but I agree, and the book does help establish a common vocabulary for all those different members of the team to actually have a productive conversation.
Yeah.
Speaking of conversations, we're going to need to wrap this one up, but before we do, I'd like to know what gifts you brought for our listeners. And how about you first, Joe?
Well, I have two gifts. There are two things that I'm finding tremendous value in. And the first is Rick Rubin's book, The Creative Act, the audiobook as well as the regular book, because the sound of his voice is the most soothing thing on the face of this earth. But I'm finding the approach refreshing. A lot of what he has to say jives with what I believe, and in some ways it's helping me recenter myself in just about everything I'm doing, which is awesome. The other thing I just discovered is a jazz guitarist by the name of Jacob Bro.
B-R-O or B-R-E-A-U?
B-R-O. It's J-A-K-O-B B-R-O.
Bro.
He is one of the most sensitive musicians I think I've ever heard in my life. He reminds me of Bill Frisell a lot, where he's just very delicate in spots. He picks his places very, very carefully. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. The record I'm listening to right now is called Gefion, G-E-F-I-O-N. Just blown away.
Oh,
Blown away.
awesome.
And his
Thanks.
entire catalog is worth checking out.
Fantastic. How about you, Leah?
Those gifts are too good. It's not fair.
I'm sorry.
I feel like Joe just gave you an electric guitar and I'm going to give you a dictionary for your birthday, but that's okay. That's who I am. That's what I like to do. So here's what I got for you. So let's see. These days I lead consumer insights and user research in a startup called Love Every. So I'm in research land all the time, and I've been doing a lot of pricing research lately. So I'm really interested in a book called Confessions of a Pricing Man by Herman Simon, which is a very lucid analysis of like why we're so irrational with pricing and what are the levers attached to that. So that's been really interesting. And then on a personal level, like the book on my bedside right now is a gift I will share with everybody, which is an oldie but a goodie. It's probably everyone's already read it, but I just read it for the first time. Bonfire of the Vanities, which came out in like the late 80s, and it's so fun. It's just like reading it is like eating popcorn. Just these terrible people who are so fun to read about. But also, I feel like it's like helped me to process my understanding of New York in a certain stage of my life when I lived there. So
Now you finally understand me, Liam.
Yeah. Okay. You're not the vanity that's roasted in this. Not at all. But yeah, it's a great book if you haven't read it.
Well, thanks for the gifts, and thanks for the time, and most of all, thanks for the new edition of the UX Team of One. It was so much fun talking with you both. Joe Natoli, Leah Buley, thanks again.
Thank you, Lou.
Hey, it's Lou. Thank you for listening to the latest Rosenfeld Review podcast. I really appreciate it. I would love to hear from you. And if you want to pop me an email, lou@rosenfeldmedia.com, tell me what you thought. Better yet, leave me the hell alone and post a review on your favorite podcast platform. Please feed the algorithm. It really does make a difference. We want to get the word out. If you like the word, give us a hand. And while I'm asking you for favors, don't forget, buy books. Support your favorite local independent publisher. We happen to be one, rosenfeldmedia.com. All those great UX books are there. So, thanks again.